Welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here at the Ploughing Championships, and on our live stage now I'm joined by Macra National President John Keane. Thank you for joining us today, John. First of all, I'll talk to you about the Macra Rebrand. We were here at a fantastic event last night at the Ploughing where Macra has got a new look. Tell us how that came about.
Thanks very much for having me on, Stella. So over the past couple of years we've, I suppose, adopted within the organisation. Our young farmers' focus is still very important to us, and we've brought in the element of focusing on rural youth and the issues that are affecting young people in rural Ireland. And we've adjusted, I suppose, the image of the organisation, and I think part of the culmination of that was the launch of the logo and the new brand last night, the Macra Rebrand. It's in fitting with the organisation's history as we've developed over the past 77 years. We still have the nod to the past and to our founder Stephen Cullinane, but we're also looking forward to the future and to engage the future generations of young people within rural communities. So it is a hugely positive step for the organisation, and we're looking forward to the months ahead to re-engage and get back to our membership.
Of course, everyone was trying to engage virtually over the last number of years through COVID, but now that you're getting back to in-person events, you've had this new rebrand, a new, I suppose, really a reimagining of Macra and trying to get out to more people. Are you hoping you'll be able to get more members into the party?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an exciting time to be involved in Macra. The young people that we've seen coming through the tent over the ploughing match over the past 3 days just has been a breath of fresh air, really. You know, people from 17 years of age to some of our ex-Macra members of 80 years of age coming back and telling us stories about their time in Macra. So it's absolutely a fantastic opportunity for the organisation to get out there into new areas, into new communities, to reconnect with our existing membership base and to grow it. I mean, we've 11,000 members at the moment, and our ambition is to certainly grow that into the future and to be the authentic voice for rural people in rural Ireland.
Let's talk about rural Ireland and making a living in rural Ireland nowadays, particularly for the younger farmer. How is it possible, or, you know, with everything that is being asked of farming and agriculture at the moment, is there a viable and sustainable future for young farmers in any sort of agricultural sector, or is it specific, or what are the challenges that they're experiencing?
So I think first of all we're entirely optimistic and hopeful that there is a future in farming for all young people. I think the past few days around the ploughing match here has really heartened me. If you look around at the amount of young people who've attended over the past 3 days, there's huge numbers of young people here. Sadly, that doesn't reflect in the numbers of young farmers actively farming at the moment. We've about 5% of the active farming population under 35, and we need to change policy for that. The government are aware of that. They need to invest in those kind of technologies and in the policies that would deliver for young people. In terms of the challenges that we face, the common theme that always has come up for young farmers over generations and over time has been really around 3 critical issues. They are around access to land, they're around access to finance, and they're around the transitionary period of which they take over from, be it their parents or people that they take over land from. Those are the 3 key challenges that our members and that young farmers keep coming back to talk to us about. But we've got young farmers in all sectors, and they're optimistic for the future in terms of being economically viable. They're optimistic in terms of providing an opportunity to meet our climate ambitions and to meet the environmental ambitions. And what they need to facilitate that is investment in those technologies that will deliver, but also greater investment in themselves to allow the young people to adopt those practices.
One of the aspects that you said there was access to land. That's an important one for young farmers.
Absolutely.
And I suppose, how can that generational renewal be supported if, you know, farmers are farming and continuing to farm into late retirement? You know, we were just in our previous panel there discussing the options for farmers to retire. Like, a lot of older farmers keep working because they haven't enough credits to get their pension and so on. So how can, what avenues are there to young farmers if they really do want to get eventually, because every young farmer, I'm sure, is ambitious and wants to have their own legacy and their own land at the end of the day. You know, what avenues can they explore?
So I think the key thing for young farmers is they want to be able to make the decisions. They want to build their business. They want to be the change makers on their family farm, on their farms. And the obstacles for the older farmers, and we've spoken to loads of them over the past number of days, they've called into us to tell us about what they think should be done to facilitate their retirement or their stepping back from farming. And the common theme, as you've rightly said there, has been financial security. Older farmers who are at the retiring age or into their 70s are looking at their financial viability, their financial security for their partners, for their families, and they're saying to themselves, well, if I don't continue to farm, what is going to be my income to sustain myself long into the future? And there the question has to be asked of our policymakers of, why are we not delivering an on-farm succession scheme that delivers a financial package for older farmers to give them that security to step back from farming, while also allowing the younger farmers to step forward, allow them to have the investment support, allow them to have the supports that we have under CAP, improve them and increase them, so that both aspects, both the younger farmer and the older farmer, have financial security. We had a retirement scheme in farming in the mid-2000s that got a lot of negative publicity in some circumstances, but the positive of it was the number of farmers that transferred land to younger farmers. We had thousands of farms that were transferred from older generations to younger generations, facilitated in that scheme. The issue with that scheme was, if the older farmer was seen with their Wellingtons on outside the back door, that their payments were at risk. And there was many occasions where a farmer might be carrying a bale of hay or helping out to move cattle along a road, and their payments were at risk because they were deemed to be farming. So what we need, and what we've seen from a young farmer's point of view, is we need the young farmers to be able to step forward, but we can't neglect and forget the experience that the older farmers have to impart on younger generations, that there must be a way through that succession scheme that older farmers can still be available on farm, can still help out on farm, and can provide that invaluable long-term experience that they have. Because as a young farmer of 30 years of age, we realise we don't know everything. We might think we know everything, but as time goes on, we realise that those that have went before us have been incredibly ambitious and have grown agriculture from where it was in the 1970s and 80s to where we are now, and we have a huge amount to learn from them. So simply retiring that knowledge and that experience is something which would be a huge mistake. So we need to harness all of that.
Yeah, we had Alice Doyle from the IFA. She's the Farm Family Chair with the IFA on a previous panel here today, and she was talking about the whole, I suppose, sensitivity around succession, and that it needs to be, desensitized really, in the benefit of both the older farmer and the younger farmer, in that both have something to contribute. The experience on one side, the new ways and enterprising ways on the other side, and that the attitude should change, that if a farmer is signing over land, they're not signing their death warrant or that's it, hang up the welly boots at that stage, that partnerships can work very well in that sense as well for a period of time.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the transition from older generations to younger generations being facilitated more recently through on-farm partnerships. Myself, I'm involved with my parents in an on-farm partnership, and it's a transition over a 5 to 7 year period where my parents are stepping back from making the decisions and managing the farm, and where I'm stepping forward to make those decisions. But crucially, there is a financial security for my parents and for myself as we move forward. Now, the important thing to remember is that we have a lot of family farms, and if you look at the National Farm Survey data, it will show that classification of vulnerable farms in terms of economics and in terms of income. And to, I suppose, put forward as being the sole solution that we can have people in partnerships to provide the financial security for older generations, simply on those smaller scale farms, on some of our beef farms, on some of our tillage and sheep farms, it just doesn't simply work because the pie is not big enough to provide both incomes for both sides. And that's why you need that succession scheme and the support for the older farmers to step back and to do that. And I think I know we're a young farmers organisation, but from speaking to older farmers, they feel as if they've been put into a box of denying that these changes need to happen, and denying that succession needs to happen, or denying that climate change is an issue, or denying that the environmental things need to change. The reality is that if we put ourselves in their shoes, the policy environment that they started farming in 30 and 40 years ago is not the policy environment that we find ourselves in today. I mean, in 1990s and the 1980s, farmers were putting out 450 kilograms of nitrogen a hectare. And that was what policy and that's what education was telling farmers to do at that time. We've moved to 30 years later and we've brought them with us, and they've developed the industry that we see on show here today around the ploughing match. And we need to bring those farmers with us to show them that there is an opportunity for them to still be part of their farm, to provide that knowledge, to have the financial security, but also that they can support the younger generation to come forward and allow them the freedom to make decisions. And as young people, we're going to make mistakes. It's absolutely natural that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make the decisions that don't work out, but we're going to learn from them.
And I just touch on land mobility. Now, in many cases, this is something positive and can work for a lot of farmers. But we do hear from farmers as well who feel that, land mobility schemes where they take land, can work or should be pushed upon them, but it doesn't suit them because some people feel, no more than someone who's renting for a long time in their life and they just want to own a home, that there's no option, I suppose, at the end of it, and they get nothing really for their own legacy at the end of it. Do you feel all farmers should be supported? Like there should be different avenues. If land mobility doesn't work, something else should be there available to support those farmers.
I think we need, because in Ireland we must remember there is a strong connection to ownership of land. I think the average is that land is for sale once every 400 years in Ireland. I think that's what it works out at. So we have to be cognizant of the history that we have in Ireland and our connection that we have to the land and producing food, and the security that offers people from rural Ireland. We can't forget that as being intrinsic to us, and the proudness that we have of where we come from. I think the opportunity of land mobility through the service that we have within Macra Rebrand called the National Land Mobility Service, it offers a wide range of options and solutions for people who are stepping back and who want to step forward. They come in the form, as you said, of leases, of partnerships, of share milking arrangements in certain cases, of share contracts in beef farmage and tillage farmers. These are all options that are afforded to younger farmers to step forward and older farmers to step back. And what it provides is, it provides an opportunity for younger farmers to build that capital reserve and that capital background that will allow them in time to have a capital reserve that allows them to compete with established farmers for either the purchase of land or for long-term lease of land. Because young farmers are finding it increasingly difficult when they're looking to lending institutions to get the financial backing to provide them with the support they need to purchase land, because they're competing with established farmers who have larger enterprises who obviously, if you're in a bank manager's shoes, would go, well, they have a larger repayment capacity than somebody who's coming forward. But we need a mature conversation, and we need to develop those solutions from our lending providers and through the financial instruments at a European level to provide that support for young farmers to step forward, to have the ability, to have the capital to eventually to purchase land. And that's where we must move forward to.
Finally, John, I just want to ask you, we've spoken there about the economic sustainability and the reality of just having an income and working every day and making sure you can feed your own family and feed yourself at the time. But let's talk about something else that's quite important to young farmers. And I suppose that involves succession, access to land, having a future for themselves as well, and that's mental health. Now, at this time of year, we don't necessarily need to be talking about people who have gone into a deep depression and can't farm or, don't see an outlet for themselves. At this time of year, and particularly in light of the requirements that are coming in for farming nowadays, maybe it's a young farmer who's actually just taken the reins and finally taken over a dairy enterprise, and that's daunting enough to take over a dairy enterprise. You're now the decision maker, not your parents anymore, and all of a sudden you're being asked to require to do all these, a lot of responsibility. You have to now meet environmental criteria. You might just get anxious, and anxiety is as important as depression, in taking care of yourself. Are young farmers supporting each other? Is it still a taboo? Are they getting better at communicating?
I think the whole farming sector as a whole needs to, step back and examine where we are in terms of the conversation around mental health and mental well-being. We all speak about the crisis and the result of the crisis, which unfortunately and many times ends up in people losing their lives. That's the very tip of the iceberg. The Titanic hit an iceberg, and that's the very top of it. All that goes underneath it is what leads to that point. So you have, as you mentioned, the anxiety, the stress, and it's about normalising that conversation among all farmers is what we all have a responsibility to do in the ag sector. And that stress is from a small thing of worrying about feed for next winter, worrying about having the financial capacity to meet your feed merchant bills at the end of the month, to who's coming after me, who's taking on this farm. From a young farmer's perspective and within the organisation in Macra, we're lucky that we have people who are engaged, who are coming forward to speak about that. And we have a programme within Macra called Make the Move that has, I suppose, championed mental health and has been at the forefront of it. And in the next few months we're going to be into the Teagasc Ag colleges to provide a pilot programme to students directly in the colleges about self-care and about awareness and about speaking about mental health to try and break down that stigma. And we've also been lucky enough with the support of FBD to begin a national support service for farmers that we hope to roll out in 2023, where all farmers across rural Ireland will have the opportunity to access a rural support service that will provide them with rural empathy on the issues that affect them. I think the conversation has moved among young people, that we now are speaking about it. We now are openly discussing, pressures that we're experiencing and relating that to one another. And from a whole of farming sector point of view, to bring all the actors and all the older generations with us to make sure that the stigma is not there. If I have a hurling related injury with me here today, and every second person that I meet is asking me, what happened and are you okay and what's the problem? That's because it's very visible. When people have a mental health pressure, whether that be from stress or anxiety or worry or a relationship issue, it's hidden. It's not across our forehead, it's not dressed up in a plaster Paris, it's hidden. So taking the time to start that conversation is going to be crucially important, and I have no doubt as the years develop, as the young people come forward and open up those conversations and speak about it and the pressures that you're feeling, we will certainly move forward a dial, and the institutions in agriculture have a very important role to play in that also.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us, National President of Macra Rebrand, John Keane.